Two cities, one coastline of electric light stretching the edge of a continent. Sydney, glass towers glinting over the harbour, money whispering through offices and marinas. Melbourne, laneways thick with espresso and memory, a hum that never quite cools. If you came here looking for a single king or a single crown, you're in the wrong century. In 2025, Australia's underworld isn't ruled, it's networked. Italian clans whose family trees reach back to Calabria. Bikie crews that move like delivery systems for muscle and intimidation. Financiers who read the stock market by day and the import schedule by night. Cocaine has become the new language of connection. Containers arrive disguised as ordinary freight, and every port pulse translates into cash, loyalty, and blood. The map redraws itself in real time. This is Crime Cipher. Faceless, respectful, relentless. We don't chase spectacle. We decode systems. And also subscribe to our channel for more interesting topics like that. Chapter 1. Origin Stories. Mr. Sin and the Honored Society. Beginning King's Cross, Sydney's neon heart of the mid-20th century. The air is thick with perfume, alcohol, and promise. Nightclubs throb with cabaret light. Brown envelopes pass like currency between tables. In smoky back rooms, the language of influence takes shape. Police on payrolls, politicians on tabs, and nightclub bosses who understand that pleasure is more profitable when it's organized. Names become myths. Mr. Sin, the boss of the cross. They stand for an era when corruption wasn't a whisper, but a system. Entertainment blurred into enterprise, and the city learned that glamour can launder almost anything. Shift south to Carlton and Brunswick, Melbourne's Italian grid. Here, espresso replaces champagne, and power speaks softly through family lines. Behind the brick shop fronts sits something older than neon. The Honored Society, Australia's branch of the Ndrangheta. No fireworks, no headlines. Just kinship, debt, and silence. Each generation inheriting both the trade and the code. Before the television cameras, before the royal commissions, both cities were already building their infrastructure of control. Sydney mastered visibility, money that shines. Melbourne mastered invisibility, money that multiplies. Together they formed the two spiritual capitals of Australian organized crime. One born of neon and bravado, the other of kitchens and kin. And even then, the currency wasn't cash, it was access. Access to docks, to doorways, to people who answered the right phone at the wrong hour. Chapter 2. Ndrangheta in Australia, from Griffith to Ligon Street. The story of Ndrangheta in Australia is written in absence. A journalist disappears after naming names in Griffith. His car is found abandoned. The silence that follows becomes its own kind of language. A royal commission drags that silence into light, teaching Australia a new word that once belonged only to foreign news. Mafia. But this wasn't fiction. It was infrastructure. Family networks fortified by loyalty, fear, and the promise that business outlives politics. From Calabria to Carlton, the system travels invisibly, hidden inside shipping manifests and migration stories. Decades later, another signal flares. A vast cocaine seizure, product disguised as mundane goods. Household appliances filled with powder worth more than the appliances themselves. It isn't the size that shocks investigators. It's the confidence. The assumption that global trade is editable. That paperwork can be rewritten if you know which hands to pay. Melbourne perfects this calculus. The city's underworld becomes less about turf and more about throughput. A port disguised as a marketplace. A logistics chain that behaves like an inheritance. The players change faces and surnames, but the rhythm remains. Pallets, warehouses, shell companies, and the quiet certainty that the real power lies in knowing where to look and when not to. This is Melbourne's particular genius and its curse. It treats crime like commerce and commerce like tradition. Chapter 3. Melbourne's Gangland Playbook. There was a decade when Melbourne felt like a nightly broadcast of grief. Familiar surnames. Black-suited funerals. The same suburban backdrops repeating like reruns. More than 30 murders in a few short years. each one both a message and a miscalculation. Task forces rose from the carnage. Detectives moved like historians, charting an underworld that operated on first-name terms. But the truth beneath the headlines was colder than rivalry. It was economics. These weren't just egos colliding. They were markets correcting themselves. The men who lasted weren't the loudest. They were the accountants of fear, the ones who could transform reputation into reliable cash flow. In that crucible, Melbourne learned a permanent lesson. Visibility is expensive. Fame attracts bullets. Survival hides inefficiency. The Gangland War left the city scarred but wiser. Families learned the choreography of caution, reinforced doors, silent routines. Children who could tell the difference between New Year's fireworks and the echo of a 9mm. The city grew quieter, but beneath that quiet hums a memory. Once the streets learned violence, they never fully forgot. And so Melbourne changed. The bravado turned to business plans. The street soldiers became brokers, and the real bosses traded notoriety for anonymity. The cameras moved on, but the structure remained. Tidier, smarter, richer. Chapter 4, Sydney 2020s, Glitter, Guns, and Global Networks. Sydney learned long ago that the best way to hide a crime is to make it glamorous. By the 2020s, that lesson had evolved into an art form. The skyline glows like a screensaver for ambition. Nightclubs perched above the Harbour pulse with white light, white smiles, and white powder. Influencers mingle with importers. Crypto bros toast with property developers. And somewhere between them, a man you've never heard of moves containers through Port Botany without ever touching a single crate. This is Sydney's modern underworld, globalized, decentralized, digital. Gone are the smoky backrooms. Deals now live in encrypted chats, time transfers, and silent investors. A single shipment can involve 4 continents and a dozen shell companies, all linked by trust and terror. The bikie colors remain, but their business card has changed. They're not just muscle anymore. They're logistics, distribution, and security enforcement rolled into one. Each tattoo tells a story, but each phone tells 10 more. And when violence does appear, a car set alight in a quiet suburb, a man shot outside a gym, it's not chaos. It's accounting. A payment missed, a shipment lost, a name spoken that should have stayed silent. Sydney still sells its myth of sunshine and success, but beneath that glitter runs a darker river, one that flows from the docks to the penthouses, from encrypted phones to open palms. Chapter 5, The Commission, Law, Power, and the Polite Face of Control. Every time Sydney burns too bright, Melbourne watches quietly. Every time Melbourne buries another name, Sydney takes notes. And between them sits the invisible hand of order, the Commission. Officially, it's a legal term. In practice, it's a mindset. The Commission is what happens when the system decides crime needs structure, not destruction. Royal Commissions, task forces, reforms, they arrive like waves. Each promises cleansing, transparency, justice. But the tide always retreats, leaving new names in the sand. Old detectives become consultants. Lawyers who once defended gang leaders now run compliance firms. Even journalists find themselves invited to exclusive briefings that sound suspiciously like rehearsed narratives. Sydney's power brokers dine at Barangaroo. Melbourne's meet quietly off Ligon Street. Both cities pretend their battles are local. But the truth is national, even global. Australia's ports have become the new frontier. Whoever controls the docks controls the country's bloodstream. And the Commission? It doesn't stop that system. It certifies it. It's the handshake between law and lawlessness. Polite, procedural, permanent. Chapter 6, 2 Cash Rivers. Sydney's surge, Melbourne's stillness. Sydney moves fast. It's the loud city, always expanding, forever reinventing itself. Money here circulates like oxygen. Quick deals, fast profits, short memories. The cocaine trade thrives because it mirrors the city's tempo, a high that demands constant renewal. Melbourne, by contrast, moves like a chessboard. Slower, calculated, less visible. Its profits accumulate quietly, folding into businesses that seem ordinary: construction, waste, logistics, real estate. Here, crime doesn't need glamour. It needs credibility. The less it moves, the safer it becomes. Sydney is the show. Melbourne is the infrastructure. Both cities feed the same bloodstream, one pumping hard, the other regulating flow. They compete in silence, trading headlines for influence. Chapter 7: Cocaine Coastlines, White Gold of the Pacific. Every empire has its currency. For ancient kings, it was land. For industrial tycoons, it was steel. For the modern underworld of Australia, it's cocaine, the white gold that fuels both nightlife and nightmares. It starts far away, in the jungles of Colombia and Peru, where raw paste becomes powder and greed becomes policy. From there, the routes stretch like veins across the Pacific. Freighters, yachts, shipping containers, each vessel a potential vault. The South Pacific is vast, and Australia's coastline is almost impossible to police. Sydney became the gateway. Its ports are deep, its logistics complex, its corruption sophisticated. The product arrives in clever disguises: frozen meat, coffee beans, machine parts, hidden in plain sight among legitimate trade. Each shipment worth millions, each loss catastrophic. But Melbourne, ever the strategist, learned to move differently. By the late 2010s, both cities were drowning in supply. What began as a luxury drug became a lifestyle. Australia, once an island too distant to matter, turned into one of the world's most lucrative cocaine markets. And where there's gold, there's always a war. The ports turned into battlefields. The docks echoed with silent tensions. Customs officers, dock workers, and logistics managers all became part of the same unspoken hierarchy, each link fragile, each secret priceless. Chapter 8: Digital Shadows, the New Silent War. If the docks are the underworld's bloodstream, the dark web is its nervous system. Gone are the days of coded phone calls and face-to-face meetings in smoky bars. Today, empires are built on encryption, hidden behind screens, layered through VPNs, and washed clean through crypto transactions that move faster than police warrants can catch. The collapse of encrypted apps like N0M and Phantom Secure exposed a terrifying new reality. Even technology has its betrayals. When the FBI turned N0M into a Trojan horse, hundreds of criminals handed over their secrets unknowingly. But for every network dismantled, two more emerged. In Sydney, this meant a new breed of operators, digital native crime, lords who understood both the code and the street. They don't drive Ferraris or wear gold chains. Their wealth exists in cold wallets. Their weapons are data leaks, and their reach is global. Melbourne's syndicates, older and more cautious, adapted by hiring them. Old money meets new systems. Together, they built hybrid empires, one that launders through NFTs, real estate, and shell charities, blurring the line between innovation and illegality. Law enforcement, too, evolved. Task forces now operate like cyber armies, tracing IPs, flipping insiders, intercepting signals. Yet for every raid that makes headlines, hundreds of encrypted conversations slip through unnoticed, tiny fragments of a bigger, invisible war. The battle is no longer fought in alleys or warehouses. It's fought in the cloud, silent, technical, and endless. Chapter 9: The New Generation, Inheriting Shadows. Every empire needs successors. And in the 2020s, a new generation of underworld heirs began to rise. Not through loyalty, but through ambition. Educated, fluent in technology, fluent in branding. They know how to move a kilo and a narrative at the same time. They mix street power with influencer psychology, turning fear into fame and followers into credibility. In Sydney, they film themselves in luxury cars, using coded captions that double as product placement. In Melbourne, they hide behind company profiles, moving money through tech startups and import-export businesses that exist only on paper. Violence still exists, but now it's branded. A hit is a message. A feud becomes content. Even funerals turn into photo ops, with hashtags that echo through the algorithm. This is the Instagram underworld, curated, stylized, and dangerously public. And yet, beneath the filters, the old rules remain. Respect is still earned, betrayal is still punished, and silence is still survival. They may dress different, speak different, and think digital. Chapter 10: The Silent War. Power in the Shadows. Every war leaves a silence behind. For Sydney and Melbourne, that silence hums beneath neon lights, in boardrooms, and at the edges of respectability. The violence may have slowed, but it hasn't stopped. It's just become quieter, strategic. Instead of drive-bys, there are insider leaks. Instead of shootouts, there are asset freezes, border interceptions, coded betrayals. A nod replaces a bullet. A wire transfer replaces a war. Sydney's crime lords learned that power doesn't always need noise. The smartest among them turned their profits into legitimate empires, property portfolios, transport companies, hospitality chains. Money laundered into legacy. Melbourne's syndicates followed, investing in the same cities they once terrorized. The new battlefield is paperwork, lawyers, accountants, offshore trusts. Police call it progress. The underworld calls it evolution. And yet, every so often, the calm breaks. A car explodes in a quiet suburb. A body surfaces by the Yarra. A name appears in a seized phone database. Reminders that the war never ended. It just went underground. The truth is simple and sobering. Sydney and Melbourne are no longer fighting for dominance. They're maintaining balance. Two poles of a single empire, bound by secrecy and sustained by demand. Chapter 11: Legacy of Shadows. Every generation inherits the sins of the last. What started with the dock wars of the 70s has now stretched into a digital century. Names change, methods evolve, but the architecture remains. For Sydney, that legacy is chaos, fast money, faster violence. The city that burns bright, then burns out. For Melbourne, it's control, slower, smarter, institutional. The city that survives by blending in. Together, they build a national underworld without borders. From Gold Coast penthouses to Perth ports, the same networks flow quietly beneath the surface. And every politician, cop, and businessman who denies its reach knows deep down that it never truly disappears. Sydney's wild chaos, Melbourne's quiet cunning, two faces of the same coin. And somewhere between them lies the true shape of Australia's criminal underbelly. Chapter 12: The Line Between. In the end, it's never about good or evil. It's about the line, that invisible border between order and chaos, ambition and greed, survival and destruction. Cops cross it when they take bribes to feed their families. Gangsters cross it when they convince themselves it's just business. Politicians cross it when they trade silence for donations. Sydney and Melbourne have spent decades walking that same tightrope, one built on blood, money, and denial. The line bends. It shifts, but it never disappears. Maybe that's the real secret of the underworld. It doesn't exist beneath society. It exists within it. Every port, every deal, every decision feeds the same machine. And whether we admit it or not, the shadows don't just follow us. They live among us. A story of power, profit, and survival. Two cities locked in an unspoken duel. One driven by speed, the other by structure. Task forces will come and go. Laws will change. Politicians will promise. But the underworld, it adapts. It learns. It waits. You've been watching Crime Cipher. Faceless, respectful, relentless. If this decode pulled you deeper into the shadows, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and comment below. Because here, every episode unlocks a darker truth.